Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're going to completely shatter an illusion. When we walk past a stunning modern building with those smooth, bare concrete walls, it's so incredibly easy to think of it as a simple, raw, or maybe even effortless finish. You just pour it, let it dry, and rip the wood off, right? Well, wrong. Absolutely wrong. Today we're going to see exactly why exposed concrete is actually one of the most demanding, complex, and high-stakes materials in the entire construction industry. Modern architects, starting with legendary pioneers like Le Corbusier, really popularized this breathtaking exposed concrete aesthetic. You see it a lot in these gorgeous minimalist spiral staircases. But getting this flawless, unified look, it requires microscopic precision and unforgiving execution. Every single detail on a staircase like this has to be planned to the millimeter before a single drop of concrete is ever poured. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the stakes are literally so high that official construction guidelines state, and I quote, "The features of the method are similar to calligraphy. Draws at a breath, rework is not acceptable." Just think about that for a second. Unlike sketching where you can just erase a wonky line or paint over a mistake, exposed concrete is a one-shot deal. The crew really has to channel a calligrapher's mindset. You prepare intensely and then you execute perfectly in one continuous motion. To really wrap our heads around the stakes here, let's contrast this with standard concrete work. If a crew messes up a little bit on a general concrete wall, it's honestly not the end of the world. They can easily patch it up, plaster it, or just slap some paint over it. But with exposed concrete, the structural frame itself is the final finish. Your entire workmanship depends entirely on one flawless placement. There's no hiding behind a layer of drywall here. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our structural blueprint for today's explainer. 1. The art of exposed concrete. 2. Flawless preparation and formwork. 3. Executing the perfect pour. 4. Protection and surface finishing. And 5. The reality of maintenance. Let's get right to it. Section 1. Flawless preparation and formwork. In the world of exposed concrete, if you haven't prepared for every single microscopic variable, you've pretty much already failed before the cement mixer even shows up. Even the tiniest overlooked detail in the blueprint can permanently ruin the final look. Because when things go wrong early on, the results are permanent. Take sand streaks, for instance. They can form along the joints if a vibrator, which is a tool they use to vibrate out trapped air bubbles, is used excessively. It presses the fine particles against the wood and causes the cement to peel. And another massive, unexpected risk? Binding wires. If the excess length of just a simple metal binding wire accidentally touches the inside of the formwork, it's going to create a permanent rust spot right on the face of your beautiful wall. And the stakes get even higher when we consider the actual wood used for the molds. Sometimes these mysterious white spots just float onto the final surface. Why? Well, if a crew uses straight-grained cedar formworks, the phenolic compounds, like tannin, which is naturally found in the lignin of the wood, actually chemically react with the concrete. It's wild. The choice of wood, the specific grain, the release agent they apply, every single one of these choices dictates the final color and texture of the wall. Section 2. Executing the perfect pour. So once your formwork is absolutely flawless, we enter the most critical adrenaline-pumping phase of the whole entire process. This is where that calligraphy mindset truly comes into play. The pour is an intricate, continuous choreography. First, you start by pouring the concrete via pump, spreading it evenly. Then comes the vibration, and it has to be just right. Enough to release those trapped air bubbles so you don't get ugly voids, which they call honeycombs, but not so much that you cause those sand streaks we talked about. Finally, the surface is leveled and troweled smooth, often with these big ride-on power trowels. It's a relentless, non-stop process. So, the crucial point is avoiding what's called a cold joint. If your team is too slow and the first layer of concrete dries before the next layer is poured on top of it, they won't integrate. You're going to get an ugly, structurally weak line straight across your wall. This is exactly why teamwork is so vital. For example, stopping a pour directly under a beam is strictly prohibited in exposed concrete because the concrete will settle and crack. The whole thing has to be a continuous, perfectly timed operation. And while this intense physical choreography is happening, the scientific exactness required on site is just staggering. The quality control tolerances are super rigid. The slump, which is basically how much the wet concrete sags, must be within exactly 2.5 centimeters. The air content can't vary by more than 1.5%. The temperature of the concrete absolutely cannot exceed 35 degrees Celsius, and chloride limits are strictly capped so the internal rebar doesn't rest. These metrics aren't suggestions, they're completely non-negotiable for a perfect finish. Section 3. Protection and surface finishing. Now, you might be thinking, okay, the concrete is poured and set, the crew can finally relax. But actually, no. We immediately enter the protection and surface finishing phase. A newly exposed concrete wall is incredibly vulnerable. Let's imagine a quick what-if scenario. What if your team just perfectly poured a pristine ground floor wall? But construction is obviously still happening on the floors above. If it rains, dirty rainwater mixed with lye exuding from the concrete can wash down and totally stain your finished wall. If someone drops a piece of rebar, you get rust bleeding. If they're pouring above, cement paste can drip down. This is exactly why crews have to immediately install plastic sheets from the flat joints and wrap the outer corners in corrugated plastic boards. The defense literally never stops. And the surface processing brilliantly illustrates that even after it's safe from the elements, exposed concrete isn't always just left smooth. The architect might want a meticulously processed surface. Crews might use chipping tools to expose the inner aggregate, they might use sandblasting, or they might use a washing finish. And here's a super fascinating detail. If they wash it, they have to brush from the bottom to the top. Because if they started at the top, the dirty water would wash down and permanently stain the lower sections. So, the forms are off, the surface is textured, and the building is complete. But what happens after the concrete dries? Is concrete really just a set it and forget it kind of material? Section 5. The reality of maintenance. We need to completely debunk the myth that exposed concrete doesn't require upkeep. The truth is, because it's a naturally porous material, it is constantly under attack from the environment. Keeping that pristine aesthetic requires rigorous, ongoing maintenance. Owners really have to plan for life cycle costs right from day one. This means high-pressure washing to remove soot and dirt, treating the surface for mold and algae, and crucially, applying water-repellent clear coats. This clear coating protects the porous surface from the weather and aging. But just like paint on a wooden house, that coating degrades over time and has to be carefully reapplied. If an owner ignores this maintenance, the visual results are pretty catastrophic. The protective film breaks down, allowing moisture to seep in. This leads to minute cracks, small cavities, discoloration, and honestly, a complete loss of the building's aesthetic value. Reworking it later on requires chipping out the aggregate, injecting epoxy resin into the cracks, and trying to match the original color, which is nearly impossible to do without it looking like a patchy, obvious repair job. So the very next time you walk past a flawlessly executed exposed concrete building, don't just see a raw gray wall. Realize that what you're actually looking at is a frozen record of perfect teamwork. It's a monument to microscopic preparation, high-pressure execution, and dedicated ongoing maintenance. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many beautifully choreographed performances are hiding in plain sight in the architecture all around us? Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep looking closely.